All right, so the American midterm elections are tomorrow, or today if you're watching this when you wake up in the morning. And as I'm trying to get some news and a bit of a break from a rather frustrating weekend, apart from going to see First Man, which was a very good film, I'm seeing more and more of this commercial, this ad on YouTube, which I said was irritating last week. It's even more irritating now. That's all about the middle class not being heard. Democrats have not helped the middle class in decades, and they are not helping now. While Americans are still watching the events of the coming Central American caravan closely, the Democrats continue their only strategy, the only one they have, of calling anyone who raises legitimate questions about what to do about it racist. That did not work in 2016, and it will not work now. I almost hope the Democrats keep running on that, because they will lose more and more, and given how radically they've become, they need to lose, and they need to keep losing. Americans are generous to people in need, but we do not like our generosity being exploited, and that is exactly what these migrants want to do. There was a lawsuit that some of them filed by 12 Hondurans filed these class action lawsuits against President Trump and several right-wing politicians for violating their supposed Fifth Amendment due process rights. Okay, the U.S. Constitution and the amendments apply to American citizens. They do not apply to people breaking into the country illegally. Trump has said they have to present themselves at a port of entry, and there will be these tent camps. There's some question about those. But the migrants in the caravan are putting Trump and Americans in a tough place. We don't want to react with military force, but we can't keep numbers like this keep coming. It's an invasion because the scale, the numbers, make it an invasion. It's an invasion because of sheer numbers, and because these migrants think they can just come in and have it their way, and we're told that these are mostly women and children fleeing terrible situations in Central America. A couple of points. First of all, it's 80+% military-age men. They're just putting the women and children in front, hoping to use them as human shields. And also, if your country's in a terrible situation, you don't just get to flee to other countries. You don't get to flee to other countries in extreme numbers, in just drove after drove, because your country is violent. I know it's hard, but what you have to do is you try to make your country better. You try to bring peace to your country. There is a conflict in America between Americans going on as it is, between a party who's trying to drag us into socialist hell, that's the Democrats, and the Republicans who are trying to bring back constitutional originality and trying to decentralize government. Which, I've said before, I wish they were a little bit braver in fighting back against intersectionality. But when the Republicans are trying to disperse the power of government, and Republicans are trying to split the power of government back into the states, back into local levels, the Democrats are trying to centralize government. Centralized government always ends up in people being slaughtered by their government by the millions. So, Americans are trying to preserve an America for people to come to the legal way. That won't exist if the left wins right now. And all these men coming out with the caravan, Well, if they're genuinely good people, why aren't they protecting the women and children in their own countries? Because it's less than 20% women and children. It's not like it's 50-50, it's not. And Trump said they have the chance to turn back now. I think they should turn back, and some have. The caravan is dwindling in numbers, but the numbers are still huge. If they turn back now, there won't be a need to be conflict with the American people. The Americans mostly just need to focus on rebuilding jobs and families and prevent their country from descending into socialist hell right now. We cannot dilute our efforts among any more people, right? In the meantime. Maybe in the future we can. We can talk about it maybe when we're not at the precipice of chaos. And immigrants looking to come into the country need to apply at a point of legal entry, just as Trump said. Trump said there's a way they can come in legally, but he does need to put his foot down about defending the southern border, as everyday Americans asked him to upon electing him. Here's a very basic question you need to be able to answer before you comment on politics and economics at all. Well, here's a couple of very basic questions. First of all, how can a country exist if it doesn't define and protect its borders? Also, with all the policies of the government, what they will say is the government takes money away from the rich people, but to fund all the policies they want. But even that won't cover everything they're planning on. Where does the government get its money? The government gets all of its money it spends from taxes. That means that if you want the government to control more in society, to provide more services, taxes are going to rise every single time. The Democrats want to build a completely socialist system where the government controls everything, from healthcare to education, to facilities, to food, to transportation, to, well, really everything. But the problem is it can only get the money to do all of that from taxing the people more and more and more. And if anyone with an income above some number that they determine has more, they're going to take it by force. This is what happens in every communist country. This is how it begins. This is basic economic reality that you need to understand. And isn't one of the most common frustrations about government bureaucracy that it sucks at quality? So why would you want any more bureaucracy? I actually had a conversation with an old lady in my neighborhood earlier this week who failed to understand some of these basic points, and failed to understand that welfare and a medical safety net, among other things, would not be anywhere near as needed if families stayed together and weren't sending their children to government schools, which, children hate the government schools. They're prisons. They're in government schools for their entire formative years. They were taught no marketable skills and told that a college degree would guarantee them a job when they graduated. Most have found out that's not really the case. Apart from very high specialized and high workload niches, such as law, engineering, medicine, it's not true that a degree automatically gets you a job. And even if you go into those, it's still years more training. And things like law, engineering, medicine, computer science, all very valid pursuits, but they are high workload and high stress. You're still guaranteed nothing. And I wish universities would stop dangling higher standards of living if the students graduate in the face of impressionable young adults who are only able to pay the excessive student loans if either their parents pay or they work like dogs or the rest of their young adult years barely making ends meet. You want to know who the real exploiters of low-wage people are? The universities are the real exploiters, and the vast majority of them are highly leftist. Of course, you will never hear the left talk about this, nor the universities. But a lot of millennials are fully aware that they were seduced into college degrees, many of them no real use at all in the job market, by teachers and principals and parents who told them over and over and over again throughout elementary school, middle school, high school, you've got to go to college. Despite the fact that college, well, school as a whole, but both public school and college, all becoming more and more expensive. Well, the elementary through high school, public schools, they're not free. Do you know what they're funded by? You know what pays for them? It's property taxes. And private schools, although they're slightly better, very, very expensive. So school's more expensive, but also less and less useful, and a degree less and less marketable. So it's, as much as people pick on the millennials, it's not their fault. Or not all their fault, at least. I mean, if the parents didn't help them do the math, then it's not all the kids' fault anyway, especially with all the messages they were giving of, you gotta go to college, you gotta go to college. Well, the teachers and parents have quite a bit of fault for giving them that message without paying attention to what school was becoming. And we do need to have some real conversations about how to reform our country. But the Democrats' ideas, their platform only runs on the base that anyone in opposition to them is a racist, sexist, bigot. I mean, come on, we were sick and tired of this 2 years ago. We are sick and tired of it now. They're also trying to count on people voting for them just because there are things that Trump does from time to time that they don't like. That's not a good enough reason to vote against Trump and the Republicans. I mean, Trump isn't even running. He won't run again for another 2 years. It's a bunch of other offices like mayors, attorney generals, a couple of issues, a number of other things. We'll go through them in a minute. But so Trump isn't even on the ballot, and I really have to say this. President Trump and the conservatives have taken being called every horrible, slanderous name in the leftist book in stride, not been shutting down their events while they've shut down our conversations and events, pulled fire alarms in schools, rioted, even at times thrown mortars in some cases in crowds, continued to waste time that could be far better spent in courts and hearings on finding I misspoke for a minute. The Democrats continue to waste time that could be better spent on finding solutions. They're wasting that time with false allegations. Remember Kavanaugh? Well, some fourth woman just accused him of rape. She flat out lied. You can't. This was already settled, and you can't tell me that something happened between the time of the hearing and now. He has a family. He has children. This is ridiculous. And men are getting really, really frustrated with this idea that women can just bring any accusation they want, and the court has to spend huge amount of time and money on it, on sorting out. If you want to know what's driving away men from relationships, men into MGTOW, and why women, asked why can't they find men interested in dating them, this is a huge culprit, because what it does is it says to men, well, because we could be falsely accused of anything at any time, it's just too dangerous. Trying to pursue relationships is way too dangerous. And it's also ruining it, which is directly also ruining it for women who want to find a relationship, for conservative women, and for women who, just want an amiable girlfriend-boyfriend relationship. They're ruining it for everyone. So it's the Republicans, it's the conservatives, it's the people who stand firm for the sovereignty of their country and their right to free and peaceful speech and assembly, even in the face of all such assaults, and even in the face of being slandered with the most horrible names throughout history. They are the courageous people. Tomorrow, when you vote with the Republicans. Vote with the free and the brave.